This taxonomy tree shows how all the animals in this title are related to each other. Click on the names of the groups to move around the tree and find the different species. Notice that the animals in each group are more similar to each other than to animals in other groups. Biologists use taxonomy to classify animals so that they can describe them and study them. Double-click on the name of a group to see more information about it. Click on an animal's picture to go to its card. This taxonomy tree shows how all the animals in this title are related. The better adapted an animal is to its environment, the more likely it is to survive and reproduce. Bodo dolphin use echolocation, which they inherited from their ocean ancestors. But to navigate the dark, tangled rivers they live in, they've developed movable vertebrae that allow their heads to twist in many directions. In the Namibian viper and North American sidewinder, we see how two completely different species on completely separate continents have solved the need to cross hot sand in the same way. Twice a day, tidal waters leave the mudskipper fish high and dry. It's evolved special skin to absorb oxygen from the air and keeps its gills wet with a mouthful of water. The blue shark adapted to its ocean environment 350 million years ago and has changed little since. With eyes that reflect light for nocturnal feeding, acute smell and taste that sense injured fish miles away, and pores that detect the electricity generated by living creatures, they are the perfect predator. When is a leaf not a leaf? When it's a hungry pipitoad. When is a worm not a worm? When it's the tail of a Continental viper, and this frog is about to discover animals use all sorts of tricks to deceive one another. Bright colors are a warning sign in nature. A coral snake advertises its deadly venom with its markings. By mimicking those colors, a harmless milk snake can glide through life feared and protected. The stripes of a young zebra allow it to blend into the herd, camouflaging it from nearby lions. Predators use camouflage too. A 21-foot crocodile is invisible in only 2 feet of water. When the wildebeest notice, it's already too late. But even the best camouflage can fail, and then the chase is on. Words are not the only way to communicate. Sight, smell, sound, and touch are some of the ways animals get their messages across. A male woolly monkey uses body language to claim his territory, while the rest of his group huddle in a non-verbal social greeting. Howler monkeys turn up the volume to warn off trespassers and avoid bloody confrontations. Smell is the sense that establishes order in the life of the Thompson gazelle. A male must constantly mark his territory with urine and dung. Each killer whale pod sings songs in its own dialect to identify kinship. The male umbrella bird's haunting call and plumage display are designed to attract females, while a pin-tailed whiter relies on an impressive aerial ballet. The distinctive sound of a rattlesnake clearly says, "Don't tread on me." Throughout their lives, animals must compete for food, territory, and mates. What looks like fighting to us is the wolf's way of debating who will lead and who will follow. The right to mate is decided in contests like this, ensuring only the strongest red deer will pass on his genes. Honduran milk snakes compete for females the best way they can, by wrestling. In puffin colonies, it's limited nesting space that must be fiercely defended. These conflicts that arise within a species rarely result in death. Competition for limited resources also causes confrontation between species, especially when they all want the same food. Animals have solved many of their trickiest problems by working together. One lion could not hope to make a meal of this buffalo calf. But by hunting in groups, lions can use a strategy of divide and conquer. One lioness distracts the mother, while another moves in for the kill. These humpback whales herded a school of fish into a circle. Now they just have to rise up amongst them open-mouthed for a great meal. Female giraffe share daycare duties. Each mother will take a turn guarding over the herd's young during the midday nap. Thousands of flamingo chicks decrease their vulnerability to predators by bonding together in one mass organism. There is no way around the crocodile-infested waters of East Africa. The wildebeest also seek safety in numbers to survive their crossing. Sometimes different species will work together for mutual gain. The oxpecker's ability to eat 7,000 ticks a day gives it entree to the most exclusive spots on the Serengeti. The reward for surviving the harshest environments is not having to compete with many other species for food, water, or territory. Polar bears hunt the Arctic protected and camouflaged by their thick white coats. Their cubs are born deep in snow dens, emerging only when they've developed enough fur and fat to stand the frozen conditions. When food is scarce, Arctic fox follow polar bears to scavenge any leftovers from their seal hunts. The South Pole is the coldest place on Earth. Only the emperor penguin can survive its winter. With thick blubber and 4 layers of waterproof feathers, they will actually overheat if the temperatures rise above freezing. Camels live in the world's hottest, driest lands. Their humps store fat for energy, and while their eyes and ears shut out blowing sand and keep in moisture, their feet spread out to keep them from sinking into the dunes. How does a frog survive in a desert? By digging down under it. An Australian burrowing frog, still moist under a protective layer of skin, will remain inactive till the next rainy season, a wait that can last several years in a bad drought. Yak graze alone in the high Himalaya. The thin air at 20,000 feet is no problem for the large heart and lungs of the world's highest living mammal. From the moment animals are born, they must eat or die, and they will spend much of the rest of their lives hunting, grazing, or scavenging. Keen eyesight and acrobatics enable the arowana fish to hunt for its prey both in and above the Amazon. Swans like vegetation, and with a neck more complex than a giraffe's, they can graze well below the water's surface. Elephants eat more than any other land animal. Throughout their lives, they will grow 6 sets of teeth to help them grind over 400 pounds of plant food each day. Some animals use tools to get at hard-to-reach prey. For chimps, a blade of grass is the perfect probe for tasty termites. Another method of finding food is eating what others leave behind, or stealing it, which is why leopards must go out of their way to keep the food they've caught. In the realm of animal architecture, form follows function. Borneo's orangutans are easily satisfied with the makeshift sleeping platforms they design each evening. While the vitelline weaver bird goes to great lengths, 300 feet of elephant grass in fact, to create a nest that will both attract a female and protect his young. Cougars spend more time looking for safe homes than creating them. This mother will move her cubs every 2 to 3 days to new dens to avoid predators. Beavers find safety in their sturdy lodges fortified with logs, limbs, and mud, and protected by secret underwater entrances. A hollow palm tree keeps blue and yellow macaw chicks safe and dry during the Amazon rainy season. But wherever they are, animals make themselves at home, even if it's in yours. The physical prowess of the animal world is most celebrated in the complexity and beauty of locomotion. The Thompson gazelle achieves speeds of 40 miles an hour, easily outrunning its predators, except the cheetah, who at 70 miles an hour is the fastest land mammal. Fastest is not always best. Swimming, this sloth is moving at top speed. In the tree, its speed will drop to 15 feet a minute. This slow pace uses little energy and requires small amounts of food. Moving through trees comes a lot easier to the athletic black Wakari monkey. Kangaroo use all 4 feet only when they're not in a hurry. When they do need to move out, they let their hind legs do all the work. Humans have always envied birds their power of flight, and power is exactly what muscular swans use to pump their long, broad wings in a constant flapping motion. Birds of prey, lacking this strength, cover great distances by soaring on air currents. With a wind beat of 170 times per second, the hummingbird is considered by many the greatest aviator in the world. It's the only bird with stiff wings that flip over with every beat, and the only bird that can fly backwards. Every species has a different method of bearing and raising its offspring. In mass spawning, capelin release billions of unprotected eggs to be sure that some will survive to reproduce. As many as 100 perfectly formed pupa toads will burst from the back of their mother. Some will make it, some won't, but her job is done. Birds and mammals have fewer babies and therefore must spend much more effort protecting and nurturing them. Marsupial babies are born before they're fully developed and stay in their mother's pouches until they can get around on their own. Some species not only feed and care for their young, but they must also teach them. This father knows what starts out as play ends up as predation. The largest mammals give birth to only one baby at a time. It will take this herd of females a whole decade to tutor a calf to maturity. Every year, Arctic terns travel between 15 and 20,000 miles, further than any other migrating animal. They spend the northern summers in the Arctic and the southern summers in the Antarctic, flying across the world in search of food and the right conditions for breeding. Arctic terns spend more time in daylight than any other animal. Avoiding the long, dark winter months at the poles, they see the sunset only when they pass through the tropics and across the equator. Terns from different places take different routes, but they all tend to travel along continental coasts and take advantage of the prevailing seasonal winds. The freshwater eels of Europe and northern Africa spend most of their lives in streams and rivers, but are born and die over 4,000 miles away in salt water. After hatching in the Sargasso Sea, the eel larvae are carried across the Atlantic Ocean by the Gulf Stream and the North Atlantic Drift. On this 3.5-year journey, the transparent leaf-shaped larvae grow from 1/4 inch to almost 3 inches in length. On reaching the coast of Europe, they metamorphose into young eels, called elvers, before swimming into the streams and rivers. The mature eels stay in the fresh water for 4 to 10 years before returning to the Sargasso Sea to spawn and finally die. Northern bluefin tuna are large, strong fish which migrate across the entire Pacific Ocean. After hatching in the western Pacific, the young fish drift north and then move east, arriving off the coast of North America in the spring of the following year. Each tuna then spends at least 2 years feeding in the nutrient-rich California current before starting the 4,500-mile journey back to its spawning grounds. Tuna make this trip only once in their lives and die soon after they have spawned. Gray whales are a familiar sight off the west coast of North America as they migrate between the warm waters to the south and the cold but rich feeding grounds near Alaska. In January and February, The whales are found in the shallow lagoons and bays off the west coast of Mexico. It is here, in the first few weeks of the year, that their calves are born. In late February, they begin their journey north. Traveling in small groups, they take about 3 months to reach the Alaskan coast, moving north as the winter ice retreats. The whales spend the summer feeding in the shallow Arctic seas. When the ice returns, they once again start their journey south. They mate en route in November and December and arrive back in their warm calving waters in the last few weeks of the year. Seasonal changes in climate affect plants and animals all over the world, but especially in the temperate mid-latitudes. Watch how the northern hemisphere becomes greener between March and September. These are the spring and summer months when many animals give birth to and rear their young. Some animals migrate as the seasons change, traveling long distances to avoid harsh conditions such as cold winters and summer droughts. They move to areas where food is plentiful and the climate is not a threat. The annual migrations of the Arctic tern and the gray whale are closely linked to the changing seasons, which affect life in the oceans as well as on land. Continental drift is slowly but constantly changing the face of the planet, and this has had a very significant effect on the evolution of species. Today, most marsupials are found in Australia, but fossils show that they once lived all over the world. Here you can see how continental drift separated Australia, allowing the marsupials to evolve in isolation. You can also see how and when the two Americas became joined. This enabled species such as jaguars, sloths, and peccaries to move from North to South America, and armadillos and porcupines to move from South to North America. Animal fossils often provide evidence of continental drift. Fossils of the same species have been found in both Africa and South America, proving that these continents were once joined together. During ice ages, temporary land bridges may form, enabling animals to cross between previously isolated continents and islands. These bridges are exposed as the ice grows and sea levels drop. Here you can see the Bering Straits land bridge that joined North America and Northeast Russia during the last major ice age at its height 21,000 years ago. Ancestors of today's camels and horses started out in North America. They came to Asia, Europe, and Africa across the Bering Straits Bridge. Bison, mammoths, and wolves, even humans, crossed in the opposite direction. These migrations have had a big impact on the distribution and evolution of animals around the globe. "55 million years ago, the ancestors of today's elephants were small, heavy animals without trunks. Since then, they have evolved and adapted in response to changing environmental pressures. As the wet, swampy forest became drier and gave way to grassland savanna, elephant species grew in size. Their legs straightened to bear their greater weights. Their noses turned into long prehensile trunks that enabled them to browse on trees and reach grass and water. In 55 million years, there have been many different species of elephant living all over the world, but today only two survive, the Indian elephant and the African elephant. From the fossil record, we can tell that the early ancestors of today's horses, donkeys, and zebras were animals the size of small sheep. As their environment changed over millions of years, these animals had to adapt or go extinct. Those that survived on the increasingly arid open plains were larger. Their teeth were more suited to grazing. Their legs also grew longer, and their feet changed, so that like today's horses, these animals came to stand on a single toe on each foot. As the plains were also home to fast-moving carnivorous predators, having legs that allowed them to gallop at a fast pace was a great advantage. This globe shows how average temperatures around the world change over the year. Animals respond in a number of ways. They grow different coats, hibernate, migrate, and breed in time with these changes. Many of those living in the mid or temperate latitudes give birth to their young as the temperatures begin to rise in spring or early summer. Temperature variations are larger in the mid-latitudes than at the equator or the poles. Looking at Africa and the Americas, you can see the red band of hot weather move north and south over the equator, in time with summer in the northern and southern hemispheres. Ocean temperatures vary less than those over land because water takes longer than air to heat and cool, which makes the oceans a more stable environment for life. Animals have to cope with daily temperature changes as well as those over the year as a whole. The biggest differences between day and nighttime temperatures are found in the center of continents and over large deserts. Take a look at Central Asia and the Sahara Desert in North Africa. Animals living in these places tend to feed at dawn and dusk, hiding away from the extreme heat and cold in burrows or holes. In contrast, animals living in equatorial rainforests, such as the Amazon, don't have to worry about daily temperature extremes. The dense vegetation blocks the intense daytime sun, but keeps the heat from escaping at night. All animals are affected by precipitation, by the amount of rain, snow, and other forms of water reaching the earth from the atmosphere. The more water an area receives, the more plants can grow, providing food and cover. Rainforests are a good example, and they are home to more species than any other biome. In Africa, the rains are seasonal, and animals, such as the wildebeest, follow them in search of grass. Deserts are the driest parts of the world. Animals living there have to survive for months or years without water. Amounts of precipitation depend on climatic factors, such as temperature and winds, as well as proximity to mountains and oceans. Coastal areas often get more rain because prevailing winds blow in clouds from the nearby oceans. Through their influence on temperature and rainfall, major winds affect animals all over the world. Dramatic seasonal changes in strength and direction are most noticeable along the continental coasts, and many birds take advantage of this when migrating. One of the most dramatic wind changes is in the Himalayas, where the north-south switch marks the beginning of the monsoon seasons. In the mid-latitudes, you can see the powerful trade winds blow from east to west across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. At the equator, calmer winds blow in the opposite direction. In the southern hemisphere, the winds are stronger because there are fewer continental landmasses to stand in their way. Ocean currents carry water, nutrients, and even animals themselves, thousands of miles around the world. They determine where marine animals live and where and when species, such as whales and tuna, migrate. The cold Humboldt Current, flowing north from Antarctica along the west coast of Chile, makes it possible for penguins to live close to the equator. Some of the most densely populated marine environments are found where cold currents rise from the depths, bringing a rich supply of nutrients to the surface. The strongest currents are found along the continental coasts, where the land blocks the flow of water between oceans. In the western Atlantic, long arrows show the Gulf Stream bringing warm water from the Caribbean, and north along the U.S. coast before heading across the Atlantic towards northern Europe. It's Stampede, the ultimate animal trivia challenge that tests your knowledge of wild tidbits from around the animal kingdom. First one to gallop, hop, flap, or slither around the globe wins.